Okay, so in the last video we talked about equations of circles, but what if the formula, or in this case the equation, is not in a friendly format? Okay, so the equation we have before us here, it's a circle. Now, how do I know it's a circle? Well, of course I made it up, but the other reason is when you have an x squared and a y squared, and they're added, and there's no other higher powers in it, eventually that can be boiled down to the equation of a circle. So there's a few techniques in order to make it look like what we want. Because, right, don't we want x minus h squared plus y minus k squared equals r squared? If we can get it in that form, then we know how to find the center and the radius. So there's a few steps to that. The first one is get any terms with variables on the left side, any constants on the right. So that's how this one's set up now. And if this minus 2 had been over here as a plus 2, we'd want to subtract it over here. From there, what we want to do is group our variables. So I'm going to have my x squared minus 8x. I'm going to leave a space. Then I'm going to have my y squared plus 10y. Going to leave a space, equals negative 2. And we're going to do a technique you would have learned in algebra known as completing the square. And with completing the square, what you want to do is, in the quadratic form, there's like an a, b, and a c. We want to take half of the b number, we want to square that, and we want to add it to both sides. Now we're going to do that twice because we have to do it for the x and for the y. Now, if there's a constant there, again, we move it out of the way, so there's nothing there. So when I talk about the a, the b, the c, I'm talking about ax squared plus bx plus c is like the format of a quadratic equation for the quadratic formula. And so for this one, we've got x squared minus 8x. So our b number is this negative 8. So I'll take half of that, that's negative 4. I'll square that at 16, and I'm going to add it right in that open space I had. I'm going to put a plus in front of the y squared here also. If you notice, the negative is actually irrelevant because half of 8 is 4, 4 squared is 16, half of negative 8 is negative 4, square that, it's still 16. Now I can't just add a number arbitrarily, so what I do is on the right side, I add 16, and that keeps both sides of my equation balanced. Same thing with the y's. The b number is a 10, so I take half of 10, that's 5. 5 squared is 25. I add that. And now what I do is on the right side I simplify. Negative 2 plus 16 is 14. 14 plus 25 is 39. Now on the right side what I do is I factor the x and the y quadratic. Now I'm going to kind of write it out for the x and then shortcut it on the y. So I say, what does x squared minus 8x plus 16 factor into? Well, it'll be x minus 4 times x minus 4. But it's always going to be the same thing. That's why this magical technique called completing the square does that. It like makes it a perfect square. So this turns out to really just be x minus 4 squared. And as you can see, we're kind of like headed towards the formula for a circle. That's x minus 4 squared. So the second one, I don't even need to write that out. I know it's going to be y, and then 5 times 5 is 25, so y plus 5 squared. That number that's it factors into, the minus 4 and the plus 5, you'll notice if you kind of backtrack, it's always half of the b. Half of 8 was 4, half of 10 was 5, or with the 8 it would be a negative 8. That's helpful to remember because if you do go through any of these that have fractions, it can be a little more troublesome. So let's identify real quick. We have a center of 4 comma negative 5. And the radius, well, remember that's the radius squared over here, the 39. So the radius would be whatever the square root of 39 is. And so if the formula is not in the proper format, we can make it work.